My name is Crystal Trapani, and I am the lead instructional technologist, digital accessibility architect, in the Division of Digital Transformation and Technology at ODU Global, which is part of Old Dominion University. Instructional designers work to create effective, engaging learning experiences that help all learners gain mastery of course concepts and content. Within this context, it is critical that a learner analysis is conducted in order to gather a clear understanding of who will be interacting with the instructional materials. However, if you're not considering disabled individuals, you're not considering the needs of the largest minority group in the world. In other words, if you're not including all learners in your learner analysis, you're effectively deciding who you're comfortable ignoring and excluding in your designs. Most learning takes place in digital environments, and that trend is only going to continue with the introduction and continued advancements of artificial intelligence. With this in mind, disabled students are not only more likely to enroll in online learning opportunities, but they're also enrolling at a greater pace than ever before. This means that more disabled learners are accessing your content. Institutional leaders know this, and they often see instructional designers as some of the most knowledgeable individuals to help faculty and subject matter experts build accessible learning content. Digital accessibility is something that is recognized in many state and federal policies. Within the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are explicitly mentioned. These guidelines provide standards for making web content accessible to people with disabilities. The moment a document enters an online space, such as an email or a learning management system, it must meet the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Additionally, the federal government is taking notice that many institutions are not doing their best to meet these standards. A 2024 update to the Americans with Disabilities Act specifically calls out educational institutions mandating that all digital materials meet digital accessibility standards. This includes content from any external sources, such as publisher materials or technologies that an institution chooses to use to engage learners. Therefore, if you're an instructional designer working even adjacent to education, you're probably required to create accessible designs. While you don't need to know the ins and outs of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, you should know the basics of digital accessibility. The reality is, beyond legal compliance, building accessible content helps you create more effective designs. Many things that make a successful learning artifact are also required to meet accessibility standards. Users have an enhanced experience when you use clear headings, proper color contrast, and alternative text for images. Chunking material into smaller, more manageable units helps all learners process information more effectively. Closed captioning on videos is something that most individuals use even if they don't have an auditory disability. Effectively, an accessible design not only improves readability and understanding for everyone, but it often looks more polished and professional than an inaccessible design. Good instructional design is also sustainable. It's more cost and time effective to build accessibly than it is to remediate content. It often takes longer to revise materials to bring them to compliance than would have taken to build them accessibly in the first place, even if you have to learn the accessibility components along the way. Preventing the issues up front can save time, money, and resources. You have an ethical responsibility as an instructional designer to consider the needs of all learners. Building accessibility into your design practices will allow you to create digital content that's not only compliant, but also effective, inclusive, and user-friendly. In many ways, this requires a mindset change. Many people think building something accessible is an additional task or chore that they have to do. They may think it is a hassle that takes a lot of time and has limited to no positive impact on learners. This is simply not the case. Approximately 1 in every 4 individuals has a disability that impacts learning, so odds are someone needs your content to be accessible. Some may think it takes longer to build accessible learning materials because they don't know the standards or process. Just like every other skill set, the more you practice, the easier it will get. Think of the first time you interacted with a new technology that you now use all the time. The first time you used it, you were not nearly as effective as you are now. Challenge yourself to change your mindset and say building accessible materials is simply part of the design process versus building accessibly is something that has to just be done. Just like you proofread an email before pressing send, you add the expectation that you will double check for accessibility. When it becomes part of the process, it's no longer a chore, but an expectation that becomes part of your workflow.